My name is Daniel. I'm 42 years old, and 3 months ago I bought my dream house. A Victorian mansion from 1890, with 5 bedrooms, a library, a huge garden, and a price that seemed too good to be true. Now I know why. Because in the basement of this house, behind a false wall I discovered by accident, I found something that should never have been found. Something that completely changed my life and made me question everything I thought I knew about reality. I found a woman, alive, who had been locked in that basement for over 40 years. If you're listening to this, it's because I decided to tell my story before it's too late, before they find me and silence me, like they did to the others who discovered the truth. Before I continue, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now. Stories like this, real and disturbing, are rare to come by. And in the comments, let me know where you're watching from. I want to know if the story is reaching you in New York, Los Angeles, London, or anywhere else in the world. I'll start from the beginning, because every detail matters to understand the magnitude of what I discovered. I always dreamed of owning an old house, one of those full of history and charm. My wife Sarah and I have been looking for years, but the prices in our city were absurd. Well-preserved Victorian homes easily cost over $1 million. That's when we found the online listing. Victorian mansion from 1890. Fully restored, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, original library, 2,000 square meter garden. Price, $320,000. There has to be something wrong, Sarah said when she saw the ad. Or it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I replied. We scheduled a viewing for the following Saturday. The real estate agent, a man in his 60s named Richard, was waiting for us at the door. He seemed nervous, which at the time I thought was normal for someone trying to close a sale. The house was spectacular. Original hardwood floors, stained glass windows, an imposing staircase, marble fireplaces. Every room looked like it was straight out of a period film. Why is it so cheap? I asked directly. Richard hesitated before answering. The truth is, the house has a complicated history. The last 3 owners didn't stay for more than 6 months. They say the house is haunted. Sarah and I looked at each other. We didn't believe in ghosts. Ghost stories don't scare us, Sarah said, smiling. Great, Richard replied, looking relieved, because it really is a wonderful house. It just needs owners who aren't superstitious. We bought the house. We closed the deal in 2 weeks. For the first 2 months, everything seemed perfect. We decorated each room with care. Sarah set up her office in a library. I turned one of the bedrooms into a music studio. The house seemed to have finally found owners who appreciated it. But there were strange things. First, the noises. Every night, around 3 a.m., we would hear what sounded like footsteps downstairs. We'd go down to check, but we never found anything. It's an old house, I'd say. Old houses make noises. Then the nightmare started. Sarah always had the same dream. A woman with long, dark hair, crying somewhere dark in the house. Help me, the woman would say in the dream. Please get me out of here. They're just nightmares, I tried to reassure her. Stress from the move, new environment. But then I started having the same dreams too. What really changed everything was what happened 3 months after we moved in. I was in the basement looking for the fuse box. The living room light had gone out, and I needed to check the breaker. The basement was the only part of the house we hadn't renovated yet. It was dark, damp, full of boxes and old furniture left by the previous owners. I was searching with my phone's flashlight when I tripped on a loose floorboard. As I fell, I hit the brick wall hard and heard a hollow sound. That got my attention. A brick wall shouldn't sound hollow. I knocked again, harder. The sound was definitely hollow. There was something behind that wall. I went back the next day with proper tools. A sledgehammer, a crowbar, a dust mask. I didn't tell Sarah. She was already scared by the nightmares and the nightly noises. I didn't want to worry her more. I started breaking through the bricks. The mortar was old and brittle, which made the job easier. After about half an hour, I had opened a hole large enough to shine my flashlight through. On the other side was a room, small, maybe 3 square meters, and it was furnished. It had a single bed, a small table, some shelves with books, and everything was clean, no dust, as if someone had been there recently. I kept breaking the wall until I had created an opening I could fit through. I entered the secret room, my heart racing. That's when I saw her. In the corner of the room, sitting on the bed, was a woman. She had long, dark hair, extremely pale skin, and clothes that looked like they were from the 1980s. She was so thin she looked sick, and she was staring at me with wide, fearful eyes. I screamed. She screamed. I fell backward, hitting my head on a wall I had just broken. "Please," she said in a hoarse voice, as if she hadn't spoken in a long time. "Please, don't hurt me." Folks, can you imagine the shock of that? Finding a living person hidden in a secret room in your own house? If you're as shocked as I was, leave a like and keep following this story. And tell me in the comments, what would you do in this situation? Where are you watching from? New York, London, Toronto, Sydney? I was paralyzed for several seconds. My brain was trying to process what I was seeing. A woman in a secret room in my house. Are you trapped in here? I managed to ask. She nodded slowly, still afraid of me. For how long? I don't know for sure, she answered. Many years. Decades. I pulled out my phone to call the police, but she became frantic. No. Please, don't call anyone. They'll kill me. Who will kill you? Who locked you in here? She started to cry. Deep, wrenching sobs from someone who had held in so much suffering for so long. I need to get you out of here, I said. I need to call for help. You don't understand, she said through her tears. If you call the police, they'll know. They always know. And they'll kill me to protect the secret. What secret? She looked me in the eyes and said something that sent a chill down my spine. The secret of who really controls the city, of who is really in power, and of what they do to people like me. I sat down on the floor, still trying to process it all. What's your name? I asked. Margaret Chun. I disappeared in 1981. I was 23 years old. I quickly did the math. If she disappeared in 1981 at 23, she should be around 65 now. But the woman in front of me looked 40 at most. That doesn't make sense, I said. 1981 was over 40 years ago. You don't look older than 40. She gave a sad smile. I know. It's part of what they did to me. Part of the experiment. Experiment. Margaret slowly got up from the bed. She approached me with shaky steps, as if she wasn't used to walking. You need to let me tell you my whole story. But not here. They might be listening. They're always listening. I helped her through the opening I had made in the wall. She was weak, needing to lean on me to climb the basement stairs. I took her to the kitchen, made coffee, prepared some sandwiches. She ate slowly, as if she wasn't used to real food. How long has it been since you've eaten something like this? I asked. I got food every day, she said. Always the same thing. A tray that appeared through a small hatch in the wall. I never saw who brought it. Sometimes I'd stay awake all night, hoping to hear a noise, but I never heard anything. So someone is still coming here, even after I bought the house. Someone always comes. They can't let me die. I'm too valuable to the experiment. What experiment, Margaret? Please, explain what's happening. She took a deep breath and began to tell a story that sounded like it came from a science fiction movie, but which I would soon discover was terrifyingly real. In 1981, I was a medical student at the local university. I was one of the top students in my class. I had just been accepted into a very prestigious research program on cellular aging. The program was funded by a private foundation I had never heard of, the Prometheus Foundation. It was called. They offered generous grants, state-of-the-art labs, the opportunity to work with the best scientists in the country. Me and 5 other students were selected. We were so excited. We thought we were going to change the world, discover the cure for age-related diseases, maybe even significantly extend human life expectancy. For the first 3 months, everything seemed normal. We studied, ran experiments on cells, analyzed data. But then the human trials began. She paused to take a sip of coffee, her hands shaking. They said they were voluntary trials, that the people had signed consent forms. We started administering an experimental serum we had developed, a compound that could theoretically slow down the cellular aging process. And it worked. My God, it worked beyond our most optimistic expectations. The volunteers' cells stopped aging. Some even reversed the process, becoming younger. We were euphoric. We thought we had discovered the fountain of youth. But then things started to get strange. The volunteers began to show side effects. Memory loss, personality changes. Some became violent. Others went into a catatonic state. When we questioned the supervisors, they said these were temporary effects, that we would soon find a way to correct them. But 2 other students, and I began to suspect something was wrong. That's when we discovered the truth about the volunteers. Margaret started to cry again. They weren't volunteers. They were missing people. People with no family, no one to look for them. Homeless people, prostitutes, undocumented immigrants. People society wouldn't miss. We were experimenting on kidnapped humans. I felt sick. And what did you do when you found out? We wanted to go to the police. But before we could, the Prometheus Foundation discovered our intentions. Of the 3 students who knew the truth, one was found dead in a car accident. Another simply disappeared. And I woke up one day in that room in the basement. And I never left. Why did they keep you alive? I asked. Margaret gave a bitter smile. Because I had taken the serum. The other students and I had been instructed to take small doses to test its safety. They wanted to keep me alive to study the long-term effects. That's why I don't age. That's why I still look 40 when I should be 65. The serum worked on me without the negative side effects that affected the others. But who's behind this? Who is the Prometheus Foundation? They are the most powerful people in this city. Businessmen, politicians, even police officers. All connected, all protecting the secret, because many of them have also taken serum. That's how they hold on to power for so long. They literally don't age. Before we continue with this disturbing story, I need you to do something. If you're finding this intense and want to know how it ends, subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. And in the comments, tell me, do you believe secret experiments like this could really exist? Where are you watching from? I spent the next few hours trying to process everything Margaret had told me. Part of me thought she might be crazy, that 40 years locked in a basement could have affected her sanity. But another part, the rational part that was looking at a woman who should be 65, but looked 40, knew she was telling the truth. I need proof, I said finally. If we're going to expose this, we need concrete proof. I have proof, she replied. In the room. I spent 40 years documenting everything I could remember. Names, dates, details about the serum, about the experiments. I wrote it all down in notebooks I hid in the walls. We went back down to the basement together, to the secret room. Margaret showed me how to remove some loose floorboards. Inside were a dozen notebooks, carefully filled with small, precise handwriting. I picked up the first notebook and started reading. It was disturbing. Each page contained scientific details about the serum, names of people involved in the experiment, descriptions of the effects on different test subjects. But what caught my eye the most was a list of names on the last page of the notebook. People who took the serum and survived, read the title. I recognized several names. The city's mayor, the chief of police, several prominent businessmen, even Richard, the real estate agent who sold me the house. My God! I muttered, how many people are involved in this? More than you can imagine, Margaret answered. The Prometheus Foundation has infiltrated every sphere of power in the city. That's how they've managed to keep the secret for so long. I took pictures of every page of the notebooks with my phone. I needed backups in case something happened to the originals. Now what? Margaret asked, what do we do? I thought for a moment. Going to the police was out of the question. The chief of police was on the list. The local media was probably compromised too. We need more proof, I said. Physical proof. Samples of the serum. Official documents from the Foundation. Something that can't be denied or dismissed as conspiracy theory. I know where we can get that, Margaret said. The foundation still operates in the same building where I worked in 1981, a lab complex disguised as a medical research center. Prometheus Research Center on the east side of town. Do you think we can get in there? It won't be easy. The building has military-grade security. But I know the layout, I know the protocols. And I have something they don't know I have. She went to the bed and pulled out a small metal box hidden under the mattress. Inside was an old, yellowed access card. My researcher ID. They never gave it back when they locked me in here. There's a chance the magnetic codes still work. They never changed the old systems because it would be too expensive. Are you suggesting we break into a secret lab? I'm suggesting we retrieve the evidence that will expose 40 years of crimes against humanity. That night, I told Sarah everything. She was shocked, of course, but also determined to help. I can't believe there was a woman trapped in our house this whole time, Sarah said, hugging Margaret. We're going to get you out of here. We're going to expose these people. We spent the next 3 days planning. Margaret drew detailed maps of the Prometheus Research Center, pointing out entry and exit routes, times of least activity. Is Search Center, pointing out entry and exit routes, times of least activity. Sarah researched the center online, looking for any available public information. We discovered that the Prometheus Research Center officially conducted advanced pharmaceutical research and received millions in private donations every year. It was a respected institution with publications in prestigious scientific journals. The perfect facade to hide illegal experiments. On the fourth night, we made our attempt. We arrived at the complex around 2 a.m. The building was immense. 5 stories of glass and steel, surrounded by a high wall with security cameras on every corner. The guards change shifts at 2:15 a.m., Margaret explained. We have about a 10-minute window where camera coverage is weaker. We waited in our car until the right moment. At 2:16 a.m., Margaret gave me the signal. We got out of the car and ran to a section of the wall where, according to her, the cameras had a blind spot. We climbed it using a rope we had brought. On the other side, we ran crouched to a side entrance of the building. Margaret swiped her old access card through the electronic reader. For a long second, nothing happened. Then we heard a click and the door opened. I can't believe that worked, I whispered. We entered the building. The interior was modern, all white, with fluorescent lights creating a sterile, cold atmosphere. It really looked like a legitimate research center. The main labs are in the sub-basement, Margaret explained. That's where they do the most sensitive experiments. We found an emergency staircase and descended 3 levels. The sub-basement was very different from the upper floors. It looked much older, with concrete walls and dim lighting. Margaret led us through several corridors until we reached a metal door marked Lab 7 Restricted Access. This is it, she said. This is where we developed the original serum. The door was locked, but Margaret knew the code. Apparently, they still use the same code from 40 years ago. Some places really don't change. Inside the lab, we found exactly what we were looking for. Refrigerators full of serum samples. Computer files with experiment data. Physical documents stored in filing cabinets. I started taking pictures of everything. Sarah collected some serum samples in test tubes, which we carefully placed in a thermal bag we had brought. This is more than enough, I said. Let's go before someone finds us. But then we heard voices in the hallway. Someone's coming, Sarah whispered, terrified. Quick, this way. Margaret pointed to a side door leading to another corridor. We ran out. Behind us, we heard shouts. Intruder in Lab 7. Activate the lockdown. Alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed in the corridors. We ran as fast as we could, Margaret leading us through the maze of sub-basement corridors. But she was weak. 40 years of confinement had left her with no physical conditioning. I'm not going to make it, she panted. Leave me here. Save the evidence. No way, Sarah said, grabbing Margaret's arm. We leave together or we don't leave at all. We reached an emergency staircase, but the door was locked. The lockdown had sealed all the exits. Is there another way? I asked Margaret. She thought for a second. The ventilation ducts. They're big enough for us to fit through. They lead to the roof. We found a ventilation grate in the ceiling of the corridor. I had to stack some chairs to reach it. I removed the grate and helped Sarah, then Margaret, climb up. I could hear the voices of guards getting closer. I climbed up last, putting the grate back in place from inside the duct as best I could. The space was tight and dark. We crawled, guided only by the faint light coming through other ventilation grates. Margaret showed us the way, remembering the system's layout. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, we reached a grate that opened onto the roof. We pushed it open and stepped out into the night air. "Now what?" Sarah asked. "We're on the roof of a 5-story building with the whole place on alert." I looked around. There was a lower building next to us, maybe 3 meters away. "We're going to have to jump," I said. I took the rope we still had from climbing the wall, tied it to a metal structure on the roof, and threw the other end toward the neighboring building. Sarah went first, then Margaret, and finally me, from the neighboring building. We were able to climb down an external fire escape to the street. We ran back to where we had left the car, got in, and sped away. Only when we were several blocks away did we stop to breathe. "We did it," Sarah said in disbelief. "We actually did it." I looked at the thermal bag with the samples and at my phone full of pictures of incriminating documents. "We got the evidence," I said. "Now comes the hard part, exposing this without getting killed in the process." Folks, are you keeping up with this craziness? If you're as tense as I was living this, leave a like and share this with someone. And tell me in the comments, do you think secret experiments like this are really happening? Where are you watching this story from? We returned home exhausted, but with a sense of triumph. We had the proof. We had samples of the serum, documents, photos. We could finally expose what the Prometheus Foundation had been doing for decades. But when we got home, we realized something was wrong. The front door was ajar. I didn't leave it open. I said, my heart started to race. "They know where we live," Margaret said, her face pale. "Of course they know. They bought this house specifically to keep me locked up here." We entered cautiously. The living room was trashed. Furniture overturned, drawers pulled out, papers scattered everywhere. Someone had been looking for something, or someone, and then we saw it. On the living room wall, written in red spray paint, "We know what you did. Return what is ours, or you will suffer the consequences." "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, already grabbing some essential items. "And go where?" I asked. "They clearly have resources. They'll find us wherever we go." "I know a place," Margaret said. "A person who helped me before I was captured. If she's still alive, if she still lives in the same place, she might be able to help us." We didn't have many options. We grabbed the essentials, the samples, the documents, clothes, and left the house I had dreamed of owning. Margaret guided us to an old neighborhood on the other side of the city. We stopped in front of a modest house with a neglected garden and peeling paint. "This is Dr. Elizabeth Hartley's house," Margaret explained. She was one of the project supervisors at the Prometheus Foundation, but unlike the others, she had a conscience. She was the one who helped me find out the truth about the volunteers. I don't know if she's still alive, but we rang the doorbell. We waited. Nothing. We rang again. After a long minute, we heard a hoarse voice from the other side of the door. "Who is it?" "Dr. Hartley? My name is Margaretchen. We met in 1981 at the Prometheus Foundation." Silence. Then the sound of several locks being undone. The door opened to reveal a very elderly woman, probably over 80, leaning on a cane. She looked at Margaret for a long moment, her eyes gradually widening in recognition. "Margaret," she whispered. "But that's impossible. You!" "I know how it looks," Margaret said. "I can explain, but we need help. They're after us." Dr. Hartley quickly ushered us inside, bolting several locks as soon as the door was closed. Her house was like a fortress. All the windows had bars. Security cameras in every room. She lived in fear. "I thought you were dead," Dr. Hartley said to Margaret, tears in her eyes. "When you disappeared in 1981, along with the other students, I knew what had happened, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. They didn't kill me. Margaret explained. They kept me alive. They locked me in a secret room and used me as a long-term test subject. Dr. Hartley shook her head sadly. The serum. You took the serum. Yes, and it worked. That's why I still look young. We spent the next few hours telling Dr. Hartley everything. My discovery of Margaret, the lab break-in, the evidence we had gathered. You have no idea what you've gotten yourselves into, she said finally. The Prometheus Foundation is just the tip of the iceberg. They're part of a much larger international organization. The anti-aging serum was developed simultaneously in several countries. Powerful people around the world have taken this serum. That's how they maintain control for so long. So this goes beyond the city? Sarah asked. Far beyond. Have you ever wondered how some politicians, some billionaires, seem to never age? How they maintain their energy and vitality even in their 70s, 80s? It's not just genetics or a healthy lifestyle. Many of them have access to the serum. A chill ran down my spine. If this was true, we were up against something much bigger and more dangerous than we had imagined. What can we do? I asked, do we try to expose just the local Prometheus Foundation, or if you try to expose only the local branch, you'll be eliminated before you can do anything? Dr. Hartley said, you need to expose everything at once. Make it public globally, in a way that's impossible to silence. How do we do that? I asked. Dr. Hartley went to a locked cabinet and took out a small metal box. I've kept this for 40 years, waiting for the right day. I always knew that eventually someone would have the courage to expose the truth. She opened the box. Inside were flash drives, CDs, folders with documents. This is everything I managed to save before they forced me to retire from the foundation. Lists of names of people who took the serum in different countries. Data from the original experiments. Proof of payments and bribes. Connections to governments and corporations. Why did you never release this? Sarah asked. Because alone, I would have been killed before I could. And because I didn't have physical proof of the serum. Only documents that could be dismissed as forgeries. But now, with the samples you've obtained, with Margaret alive as proof that the serum works, now we have a real chance. We spent the entire night organizing everything. We scanned all of Dr. Hartley's documents, combined them with the photos I had taken at the lab, and arranged it all chronologically. We need an investigative journalist, Dr. Hartley said. Someone from outside this city, with an international reputation, who can't be easily silenced. I know someone, Sarah said. A former college classmate who now works for a major international newspaper. If we can get this to her. But then we heard the sound of cars pulling up in front of the house. Dr. Hartley checked her security cameras. 3 black SUVs. Men in suits getting out, some clearly armed. They found us, she said, surprisingly calm. I knew this would happen eventually. Is there a way out? I asked, desperate. There's a tunnel in the basement. I built it years ago, for this very moment. It leads to the house next door, which is abandoned. From there you can escape. What about you? Margaret asked. I'll buy you some time. I'm an old woman. They won't kill me in front of witnesses. They'll try to interrogate me first. That should give you a few hours head start. We didn't want to leave her, but we had no choice. Dr. Hartley hugged each of us. Expose these monsters, she said. Make all these years of fear worth it. We went down to the basement as we heard the front door being broken down. We entered the tunnel, a narrow, damp corridor that smelled of mold, and began to crawl. It took us about 15 minutes to get through. On the other side, we emerged into the basement of a truly abandoned house, full of junk and broken furniture. We left through the back door and ran to the parallel street, where we had left our car a few blocks away. Where to now? Sarah asked as she drove away at high speed. To the airport, I said. We need to get out of the city. Catch a flight to New York, where Sarah's journalist friend is. But Margaret shook her head. They'll be watching the airport. They probably have our descriptions by now, maybe even photos. So what do? We drive. It's a long trip, but it's safer. We stopped at a 24-hour store to buy supplies. Food, water, some basic disguises. I bought a knife and a baseball bat, thinking we needed some form of defense. We started the drive. It was almost 8 hours to New York. Sarah drove while I sat in the back with Margaret, organizing all the documents and preparing an executive summary of what we had discovered. We had been on the road for about 2 hours when we noticed a black SUV following us. "I think we have company," Sarah said, looking in the rearview mirror. The SUV sped up, getting closer. I could see 2 men in the front seat. "Floor it," I yelled. Sarah slammed her foot on the accelerator. Our sedan wasn't built for high-speed chases, but we did our best. The SUV kept pursuing us, easily keeping pace. Then another SUV appeared ahead of us, coming from the opposite direction and making a sharp turn to block our path. Sarah had to brake hard. We skidded, nearly flipping over, but she managed to control the car. We were trapped, SUVs in front and behind. Men got out of the vehicles, all armed. "Get out of the car," one of them ordered. "Give back what you stole, and nobody gets hurt." I looked at Sarah and Margaret. We had nowhere to run. We were on a deserted road, with no help in sight. "You don't understand," I shouted through the window. "This isn't just about you. It's about all the people you killed, all the illegal experiments, all the lives you destroyed." "Last chance," the man said. "Get out of the car." That's when we heard the sirens. Police cars appeared from both sides of the road, surrounding the SUVs. But it wasn't the local police. They were FBI vehicles. The armed men seemed confused. Some raised their weapons. But then they saw they were completely surrounded by at least a dozen federal agents. "Drop your weapons," an agent yelled through a megaphone. "You are surrounded." The men had no choice. They lowered their weapons and surrendered. An agent approached our car. She was a woman in her 40s, hair tied back in a ponytail. Her expression serious but not hostile. "Are you Daniel, Sarah, and Margaret?" she asked. "How do you know our names?" I asked, confused. "Dr. Elizabeth Hartley contacted us a few hours ago. She's had our emergency number for years, waiting for the right moment to use it. She told us everything." "Is she okay?" Margaret asked. "She's under our protection now, just like you will be." The agent introduced herself as Special Agent Jennifer Morrison. She explained that the FBI had a file on the Prometheus Foundation for years, but never had enough evidence to act. "Dr. Hartley gave us a summary of what you discovered." She said, "If it's all true, if you really have samples of the serum and documents proving the illegal experiments, this is the biggest criminal investigation in recent history." We were taken to a secure FBI location, a safe house in the suburbs. There, we spent the next 3 days being debriefed, telling our story over and over, handing over all the evidence we had collected. FBI scientists analyzed the serum samples. The results were impressive and terrifying. The compound really did have anti-aging properties, but it also contained extremely dangerous elements that could cause the side effects Margaret had described. "This is both revolutionary and terrifying," said the head of the scientific division. "In the right hands, it could save lives. In the wrong hands, well, we've already seen what happened." The investigations expanded rapidly. Based on Dr. Hartley's documents and the information Margaret provided, the FBI began to investigate international connections. They discovered that the Prometheus Foundation was just one of several similar organizations operating in different countries, all connected, all conducting similar experiments, all providing the serum to powerful people in exchange for protection and influence. It was a global conspiracy that had operated in the shadows for over 40 years. Folks, are you able to process the magnitude of all this? A global anti-aging conspiracy, illegal experiments, powerful people living decades beyond their natural lifespan. If this is hitting you as hard as it hit me, leave a like, subscribe, and share this story. And tell me in the comments, do you believe conspiracies like this really exist? Where are you watching from? 3 weeks after our arrival at the FBI safe house, the story exploded in the media. The international newspaper Sarah's friend worked for published a massive front-page investigation. The anti-aging conspiracy, how a global elite conducted illegal experiments for decades. The article had everything: documents, Photos, scientific analysis of the serum samples, testimonies from Margaret, Dr. Hartley, and our own account of everything that had happened. The reaction was explosive. Within 24 hours, the story was on every news channel in the world. Protests began in several cities. Politicians and businessmen mentioned in the documents tried to deny involvement, but the evidence was irrefutable. The mayor of our city resigned. The chief of police was arrested. Dozens of Prometheus Foundation executives were indicted. And it wasn't just in our city. Similar arrests were happening in several countries. But with the exposure came the threats. We received messages daily. Some were supportive, from people thanking us for exposing the truth. But many were death threats, some quite specific and frightening. You destroyed decades of scientific progress. One message read, "This serum could have saved millions of lives. Because of you, that opportunity is lost. You will pay for this." Read another, "You and your family. No one destroys powerful people and gets away with it." We had to remain under federal protection for months. We couldn't go back to our house, which, by the way, was being investigated as a crime scene due to the secret room where Margaret had been held. Margaret was handling everything surprisingly well, considering she had spent 40 years in isolation. But it was also clear that she needed extensive psychological help. The FBI provided therapists specializing in trauma. "Sometimes," she told me one day, "I still can't believe I'm free. I wake up in the middle of the night, thinking I'm still in that dark room, that this was all just a dream." "You are free," I said, "and thanks to you, many other people are being freed too." The FBI found 7 more people held in situations similar to yours in different foundation facilities. This was true. The investigations had revealed that Margaret wasn't the only long-term test subject. There were other people who had been held in captivity for years, all to study the effects of the serum. Dr. Hartley was also under protection. She had become a key witness in the case, providing technical details and historical context that only someone with her level of involvement could offer. "I carried this guilt for 40 years, she told me. "I knew what was happening and did nothing to stop it. At least now, before I die, I can help fix some of the damage." But not everything was positive. The exposure of the conspiracy had created an unexpected problem: public panic. People started to distrust any public figure who looked too young for their age. Conspiracy theories multiplied online. Some radical groups began demanding age tests for all politicians and corporate leaders. And there was a scientific question. The serum actually worked. It had problems, dangerous side effects, but the basic principle was correct. Humanity had discovered a way to slow down aging. What do we do with this knowledge now? A senator asked during a congressional hearing, where we were called to testify. Do we completely ban research on anti-aging? Or do we try to continue in an ethical way? It was a question with no easy answer. For months after the initial exposure, the trials began. There were dozens of cases in multiple jurisdictions. The main case was against the Prometheus Foundation and its top executives. But there were also cases against politicians, police officers, and businessmen who had benefited from the serum, knowing its criminal origin. Sarah, Margaret, Dr. Hartley, and I testified in several of them. It was emotionally exhausting, having to relive the story repeatedly, being cross-examined by defense attorneys trying to discredit our account. But in the end, the truth prevailed. The top executives of the Prometheus Foundation were sentenced to terms ranging from 25 years to life in prison. The corrupt mayor of our city got 15 years. Dozens of other people received various sentences, but some got away. People too powerful, with connections that were too strong. They resigned from their positions, stepped down from companies, but were never formally charged. That's how the system works, Agent Morrison explained to me. We managed to catch a lot of big fish, but some are too big to be touched, at least for now. It was frustrating, but it was reality. 6 months after it all began, we were finally able to return to a semi-normal life. The FBI deemed the threat level had decreased enough to reduce our protection. We didn't go back to the Victorian house. We sold it to government, which turned it into a kind of museum, a memorial to the victims of illegal experiments. The secret room where Margaret had been held was preserved exactly as it was, as evidence and a reminder. We bought a new, smaller house in a quiet neighborhood in another city, a place where we could try to start over. Margaret came to live with us. She had nowhere else to go. Her family had died decades ago. She had no job, no updated documents. It was as if she had been frozen in time in 1981, and now had to learn to live in 2024. "Everything is so different," she would say, fascinated and intimidated by the modern world. The internet, smartphone, social media is like science fiction to me. Sarah and I help her adapt. She began intensive therapy, both to process the trauma of 40 years of captivity and to cope with being a person out of time. "I should be 65, she told me one day. "I should have had a career, a family, grandchildren. Instead, I lost 40 years of my life, and I still look 40. I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse." "It's a second chance," Sarah said. "You still have decades ahead of you. You can do all the things you couldn't do before." And slowly, Margaret began to do just that. She went back to studying medicine. To her surprise, her old credits were still valid. She started volunteering at a free clinic. She started living again. Dr. Hartley was not so lucky. 3 months after the trial began, she suffered a heart attack and passed away. She was 84 years old. Her funeral was small but meaningful. It was the three of us, a few FBI agents who had worked on the case, and surprisingly, some of the other victims who had been rescued thanks to the investigation she helped start. "She waited 40 years to do the right thing," I said at the funeral, and when the opportunity came, she didn't hesitate. Thanks to her, dozens of lives were saved and hundreds of criminals were held accountable. 1 year after our initial discovery of Margaret in the basement, our lives finally began to feel normal again. I went back to my work, freelance graphic design, something I could do from home. Sarah resumed her career in digital marketing. Margaret was preparing to take her medical residency exam. But something had fundamentally changed in us. We could no longer look at the world the same way. We knew now that there were dark secrets hidden in the shadows, that powerful people were capable of unimaginable things. "Do you regret it?" Sarah asked me one night. Breaking down that wall, discovering Margaret? I thought for a long moment. No, if we hadn't, Margaret would still be trapped in that room. Those other victims would still be in captivity. The illegal experiments would still be happening. "No, I don't regret it." "Me neither," she said. "But sometimes I wish I could go back to being ignorant. It was easier not knowing these things happen." I understand what she meant, but the truth, however painful, is always better than comfortable ignorance. Folks, we're reaching the end of this incredible story. If you followed along this far, thank you so much. If this story moved you, if it made you think about what might be happening in the shadows, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Share it with friends you think need to hear this. And tell me in the comments, do you believe conspiracies on this level really exist? Where are you watching from? Today, exactly 1 year after discovering Margaret in the basement, I am recording this account. I want to document everything that happened, not just for myself, but so that others know that the truth is worth it, no matter the cost. The investigations are still ongoing. The Prometheus Foundation case paved the way for similar investigations in other countries. More organizations have been uncovered, more victims rescued, more criminals arrested. But we also know we didn't get everyone. There are still powerful people out there who benefited from the serum, who are living extended lives thanks to illegal experiments. Some of them are still in positions of power. Margaret is doing well now. She got her medical license and is working at a clinic specializing in trauma. She uses her own experience to help other victims recover. "It's strange," she told me recently. "I spent 40 years in isolation, thinking my life was over. But now I feel like I'm truly living for the first time, as if those 40 years were just a pause, and now I'm back to finish what I started." She has also become an activist. She speaks publicly about her experience, advocates for stricter regulations on medical research, and works to ensure nothing like this can ever happen again. Sarah and I have also changed our lives. We wrote a book about the whole experience. It's being published next month. The profits will be donated to organizations that help victims of illegal medical experiments. We also started a foundation, ironically named the Truth Foundation, dedicated to exposing corruption and protecting whistleblowers. We want other people who discovered dark secrets to have a safe place to turn. But it wasn't easy to get here. There were nights I woke up in a panic, thinking armed men were breaking into our house. There were days Sarah cried, feeling the weight of everything we had lived through. There were moments Margaret regressed, mentally returning to that dark room. Therapy helped. A lot. We all underwent intensive therapy, both individual and group. We processed the trauma, learned to cope with PTSD, and found ways to move forward. And slowly we began to heal. A few weeks ago, we visited the old Victorian house again, now a memorial. It was strange to be there, to see the room where Margaret had been trapped, now with explanatory plaques and photos documenting her experience. How does it feel to see this? I asked Margaret. She was silent for a moment, looking at the small bed, at the walls that had imprisoned her for so long. I feel relief, she said finally, because now other people know. It's no longer a secret hidden in the shadows. It's documented history, evidence that these things happen and that they can be fought. The memorial also includes the stories of the other victims who were rescued, 7 people in total, held in conditions similar to Margaret's, all used as long-term test subjects. We've met all of them over the past year, each with their own traumatic story, each coping in their own way with what happened. We form a kind of informal support group, meeting regularly to share experiences and encourage one another. You saved us, one of them told me. If you hadn't found Margaret, if you hadn't had the courage to expose everything, we'd still be trapped. Some of us would probably be dead by now. It's a heavy thought, but also a gratifying one. Knowing that our actions saved real lives makes everything we went through worthwhile. There's also the matter of the serum itself. The compound was confiscated and is now being studied by legitimate institutions under strict ethical oversight. Scientists are trying to understand exactly how it works, whether it's possible to replicate the positive effects without the dangerous side effects. If we can make this work safely and ethically, one of the researchers explained to me, it could revolutionize medicine. We can not only extend life expectancy, but improve the quality of life in old age. But it has to be done the right way, with informed consent and rigorous oversight. It's a fine line. The same knowledge that was used for so much evil could, if handled correctly, be used for great good. Margaret has conflicting feelings about it. On one hand, she is a scientist and recognizes the positive potential. On the other, she personally lived the consequences of the abuse. I hope they can make it work, she said. I hope something good can come from all this suffering. But I'm also afraid that no matter how many regulations they put in place, there will always be powerful people trying to abuse the system. It's a valid fear, and one we share. Looking back, everything that happened still seems surreal. A year ago, I was just a normal guy buying his dream house. Now I'm the co-author of a best-selling book, co-founder of a nonprofit organization, and part of a story that changed criminal investigations globally. But more importantly, I helped free innocent people and hold powerful criminals accountable. And that, in the end, is what really matters. If you're listening to this story and find yourself in a situation where you've discovered something wrong, something criminal, something that should be exposed, I encourage you to do the right thing. Yes, it can be dangerous. Yes, it can be scary. Yes, it can turn your life upside down. But the truth matters. Justice matters. The victims matter. And if we could do it, 3 normal people against a global conspiracy, then anyone can. Margaret wants to leave a final message. I'll pass it over to her. My name is Margaret Chen. I spent 40 years of my life trapped in a dark room, used as a test subject in illegal experiments, forgotten by the world. But I didn't break. I didn't give up. I documented everything. I kept my sanity. I kept my hope. And when I was finally found, when I finally had the chance to expose the truth, I didn't hesitate, even knowing the risks, even knowing I could die in the process. To anyone who has ever been a victim of illegal experiments, of abuse of power, of systemic corruption, you are not alone. There are people who care. There are people who will fight for you. And there is always hope for justice, no matter how much time has passed. Don't give up. Keep fighting. The truth eventually prevails. I couldn't have said it better myself. This is a story of how a broken wall in a basement led to the exposure of one of the biggest conspiracies in modern history. It's a story about courage, about doing the right thing even when it's hard, about justice delayed but eventually served. And it's a story that isn't over yet. The investigations continue. More truths are being uncovered. More victims are being found. But for the three of us, Daniel, Sarah, and Margaret, this chapter is closing. We are ready to move on with our lives, carrying the lessons we've learned but no longer defined solely by this traumatic experience. We are survivors. We are fighters. And we've proven that ordinary people can make an extraordinary difference. Folks, thank you so much for following this story to the end. If it touched you in some way, if it made you think, if it inspired you to do the right thing in your own life, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share. And in the comments, tell me, what was the most impactful part of this story for you? Would you have had the courage to do what we did? And where are you watching from? New York, Los Angeles, London, Toronto, Sydney, or somewhere else in the world? Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, the truth always matters, no matter the cost. Until the next story,